I'm Kelsey Crane from Thurston County. I'm here today to introduce you to Dave Kangiser and Grant Gilmore from the city of Tumwater. As you can see, they're repping the beaver, doing it right. Beaver have a long history across this world and this great nation. Mostly, if you look back, of more or less extermination and massive exterminations. We look back at the sheer numbers of beaver. Beaver were an incredibly populated species, and they were the original and are the original water engineers. So what can we learn from the beaver? How can we work with the beaver, coexist with the beaver, and create synergy with beaver while we're doing our stormwater management out there? Let's find out.
We really appreciate you coming in. We're excited to share this. I started with the city of Tumwater, almost a year ago, and I really knew very little about beaver habitat. I've always been a fan of the species, but really had never really dove into their world. And so Dave here has been involved with the beaver management program for the city for almost 3 years now. And so Dave's got a lot of hands-on experience along with Matthew in the back. These two guys are constantly in the water. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten enough photos of them yet, but I will in the coming year. But I've been amazed at what they've accomplished and the people that we're meeting along the way as we dive deeper into this. So yeah, a little bit about the beaver. We're going to talk about the profile, just a little bit correlations between beaver management, stormwater system management, the ecosystem benefits, strategic site management, restoration efforts, future planning and management, and of course education and outreach. And really can't stress every one of these facets make up our beaver program. A lot of it's in development, but all of these aspects are currently under consideration or we're actively engaged. So I want to give a special thanks to Jennifer Vanderhoff. She is the beaver specialist with King County. She provided some of these amazing photos. She is one of the cohorts that we've been collaborating with. So she's got 2 manuals out. We'll reference those in the reference section, resource section in the last slide. But yeah, profile, preferred habitat, and fun facts. So the first fossil record dates back 30 million years. By the end of the 1800s, of course, beavers were nearly extirpated due to their pelts, oil, and so forth. From the late 1900s to now, there's been a slow recovery, and we're seeing amazing things with the ones that are here. They are the largest of the rodent family. They range in size from 35 to 65 pounds. Their teeth grow continuously, so they are constantly in need of wearing them down on bark and trees. They are herbivores. Some people think they eat fish. They don't. Yeah, that one kind of blew me away. They live 10 to 15 years. The largest recorded beaver, which was found, I believe, in the 1930s, weighed 110 pounds. Yeah, so I don't know if I want to see a beaver that big. They're monogamous and mate for life. So when you trap and remove, you have to keep in mind what you're breaking up. And their offspring are born in the spring, and they are called kits. And they typically have 1 to 6 kits per season. So they're pretty productive. And in 2 years, basically, the kits leave and go find new homes. So their mission obviously is habitat creation, and they create habitat to ensure their safety and survival. So basically what you're seeing here are some images of a dam and a den. The dams can be up to 10 feet high in some cases, depending on the landform, and their dens can be massive. The dens are constructed in a way where they are able to store huge food caches in the winter for the winter months, especially in those higher elevations where you get streams and lakes and rivers that freeze over. And of course, they have these really thick pelts that keep them warm. So obviously, beaver dams create varying water levels. Their primary goal is to create habitat, which was mentioned. Again, at age 2, males are pushed out. Let's see, their favorite food is aspen, willow, and birch. They'll eat pretty much everything though, given the opportunity. Yeah, and I think I'm gonna skip through some of this because we have touched on it already. Obviously, you know, the one thing I think everybody knows is they are a keystone species and they are responsible for creating habitat for literally hundreds, if not thousands, of different species. So they are an absolute amazing creature. Again, we look to them for wetland creation, habitat creation, water storage. They slow down the release during low flow conditions. Aquifer recharge is a big thing. We can talk a little bit more about that. Water quality benefits, ecosystem services, and then living with wildlife as a lifestyle. These are all key components that we're kind of diving into as we learn more about beaver habitat in the city of Tumwater. And how we manage that, how we communicate it, and how we work with them. So just jumping onto aquifer recharge, what we noticed is a lot of our beaver locations are located within our larger wetland systems. Those larger wetland systems are dialed into some of our pristine aquifer recharge areas. So obviously, you know, beavers play a big part in keeping water within a system and allowing those aquifers to charge at healthy rates. So it's just if you turn on your layers through GIS, you start to see the relationship and how they interface with water and what it does for us within these critical areas. I'm going to have Dave talk a little bit more about this, but I'll just quickly kind of lead in. So the city of Gresham, Oregon, they installed a stormwater pond, and it was not designed for beavers. Beavers did eventually come in and completely disrupted the dreams and hopes of the engineers that designed it. And the cool takeaway from this particular project that I thought was really interesting is that instead of eradicating the beaver and restoring the design engineered feature back to its intended purpose, they decided to take 2 years to study the effects of how the beaver affected it and did it actually change the performance ratios. And the end story of this is that with beaver modification, it actually performed better than the intended design. So on that note.
Yeah, I want to give a big shout out to Gresham for doing this type of study. The thing about beavers and stormwater features, we just don't have a lot of information, not a lot of data to support whether they're good or they're bad. So this particular instance, I just want to preface by saying this, you know, this doesn't apply to every stormwater facility that we have out there. You know, so there's some facilities we do not want beavers. I'll just say that right now. This particular facility that was that they built and designed and whatnot, you can see the inputs here and here on each side. It was designed to kind of flow back and forth, settle out water, and then discharge out to the Columbia River system. So what happened let me back up just one. So at this stage, they were able to collect some data, which I think is super important in any stormwater feature that we're doing right now. And Grant and I talked about this. Somewhere right now, we're in a data deficit. We need to start collecting some data to kind of measure some of these effects over the long term. So if you got a new system like this, collect some data, see what it's doing, how it's performing. That'd be great. So they collected the data before the beavers moved in. So they had a good snapshot of how it was performing before beaver. So beavers found this as a great facility to move into. It was built in such a way that there was, as it meandered through it, water fell over a series of rock weirs, so to speak. So you had that sound of running water, and that's basically what triggered it to start building dams. So they altered the flow of the system, and basically they created a large dam where the water was supposed to go back and forth. So the water was backing up against this large dam and seeping through it. So the great gave a great opportunity. Let's collect some data now and see what's going on, see if it's performing the same, if it's better, if it's worse. And so they actually, oops, wrong way. So the results of the study were pretty astonishing. And again, this is just one system, one set of criteria that they, that they were looking at. But as you can see, in every single metric, the Beaver in the system outperformed the engineered system. So a lot of what Beaver do is the stuff that we're engineering systems to do. So, and what's awesome is you don't have to pay it. You don't have to, and they do the work at night when, they're nocturnal, so they do the work at night. They've been evolving for 30 million years now. So if you think about that, how long they've been doing this type of work, it's absolutely amazing. So they can work us under the table and get results like this. The study also goes into temperature, and it's amazing to see that what Beaver has done with temperature over time too. It's outperforming our engineered systems by far. So again, one system, one specific incident that they measured. This doesn't happen in all scenarios, but it works. It's working here. So I encourage you to check out City of Gresham study. It was pretty amazing to see. So so I want to talk a little bit more about how we're working in Tumwater and how we're doing our how we walk through our process of managing beavers. We've got probably a dozen or so sites where we've got beavers that are impacting our right-of-way infrastructure and our MS4. I know that probably doesn't happen in all jurisdictions, but we've got a lot of wetlands. We've got a lot of roads through wetlands, and it's great beaver habitat. So in the past, way before me, way before a lot of the folks around the city, trapping was a pretty common occurrence. We trapped, relocated, I want to say in quotes, and that was just a routine that just happened every year. And some jurisdictions still do that. So I want to walk through the process that we go through when we get a call or when we get a known beaver problem in our right of way. So do we need to manage it? What type of permits do we need? What type of agreements do we have to have in place if it affects private property? I want to talk about a few of the tools that we use: covert exclusion devices, and flexible levelers, and beaver dam analogs. And then compare and contrast trapping and relocating with some of the adaptive management pieces that we're doing. There's a little bit of data that's associated with that too. So first of all, we get called out to a site, or we know there's flooding in the road, or what have you. This particular site, 48th Avenue, this is a private piece of private property. Property owner called us out and said, "Hey, there's a beaver out here." You can see this map, 48th Avenue. It's a small private road. We don't have much infrastructure out there. There's a small culvert. The beaver dam is the yellow line across the creek there, and flow is heading north. So, but what's interesting about this site is you can see off to the east, there's this big, large wetland complex. You can tell that by the vegetation here. So we got out to the site. You can see us here assessing the beaver dam. It's a pretty impressive dam. We've got a couple feet of fall. But in reality, there wasn't a whole lot of infrastructure that was threatened. And they had this big wetland complex that there was an overflow to. So, so in reality, we thought, well, shoot, do we need to manage this beaver at all? Is there anything that we need to consider? Is it threatening private property? Is somebody going to get flooded out? So ultimately, we decided, you know what? We're going to monitor this site. We're going to monitor water levels to see what happens when they, when we get a significant rain, it starts to expand the banks, and see if that's going to threaten anything. And so ultimately, we decided this site doesn't need management at all. We don't need to touch it. And that's the best approach. If you can go into a situation and not do anything, great. Let the beaver be a beaver. It's perfect. But also we wanted to educate the landowner, because when I rolled up to his house, first thing he said is, "I got a beaver. Let's call a trapper." And let's back up a little bit. So that's when we walked through this process, and we've been working with this landowner now for a couple of years. we've kind of got them on board with our management approach. Let's just let this beaver be. It's cool to have a beaver in your backyard. So that's first and foremost. Do we need to manage it at all? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Okay, so that was one scenario. Another scenario, okay, we've got some stuff we got to consider. We've got right-of-way impacts that might be impacted. We've got private property that might be impacted. So, okay, there's another scenario. We need to manage this beaver somehow. So you can see in these pictures, we've got localized flooding. This is a picture in the middle there. This is the backyard on Barnes Lake. I was at that site last week and walked all the way up to the trees and everything else. I mean, the water's not supposed to be this high. So the beaver was obviously impacting water enough to flood out private property. So, so you kind of walk through this assessment. What's being threatened? If there's threats that are happening, probably need to do something. So what are our options? First, before you get in the water, you got to get a permit, right? HPA permit. You got to get that done. So that's a really easy process. Work with Fish and Wildlife, your area biologist. Ours has been great. We've got a few permits in place. I've got some permits that we've worked with private property owners for as well. So we've been in partnership with them. It's a great public-private partnership. There's a little bit of reporting that goes along with this, but these are fairly harmless as far as permits go. So don't skip this piece. Make sure you get your permits in place. Next, we're going to be on private property, and we're a government agency, we're a jurisdiction. We probably should get something in writing, so everybody's on the same page with a right of entry agreement. So those are pretty harmless as well. What's nice about the right of entry agreements is you can put some conditions in there. If you want somebody to monitor the site, so you don't have to monitor it all the time. If you want them to do some routine maintenance, just like clearing debris off the cages and whatnot, you can write that into the agreement as well. You can share costs if that's something that you want to put in there as well. So these agreements can be drafted so they're beneficial to both parties. So don't skip this part either. This is a vital piece as well. So one of the tools that we have is a culvert exclusion device. And these take many shapes, many forms. And these are 3 that we've got installed in sites at the city of Tumwater. And basically, if a beaver will view a culvert as a restriction in an area, hear that running water through that culvert and want to plug it up and dam it. So it's an easy spot to clog right away, and all of a sudden you've got water backing up really, really quick. Mark was out on a site that I think it was this site here on your left. We were just watching water. Of course, they called us on 4 o'clock on a Friday and said, "Oh my gosh, flooding! Get out here now!" So Mark and his team rushed out there and unclogged it. But those impacts happen very quickly. So oftentimes they happen too quickly for us to respond without property damage. So
we dug out about 3,500 pounds out of the culvert.
Wow, just wood. So the culvert exclusion device is basically a very simple structure that goes on the upstream side of the culvert. The downstream side of the culvert doesn't seem to be too effective, but if you put these on the upstream side, they seem to be the most effective. And we made it with all of them with simple cattle wire and T-posts. And that's it. That's all you need. You really want to be considerate though of fish passage. So you want to have the mesh large enough for fish passage. And we've also learned the hard way that putting a bottom or lining the cage with rocks so the beaver can't excavate their fence, that's very helpful too. We used rocks for this one on the right here, and that seemed to be pretty successful. The beaver actually found a way to get around this one in the middle because we didn't put a bottom on it. There was a lot of topography that we had to deal with. We couldn't get it right. So I got more on that one coming up. But yeah, culvert exclusion device is a good tool. Well, what if you can't get your culvert exclusion device big enough and the beaver starts plugging that up? Well, there's options for that too. Add a flexible leveler, and I'll talk about flexible levelers here in a little bit, but basically you run a tube into your culvert exclusion device and you put a box out a little ways from it. So the beaver keeps plugging up this culvert exclusion device, but leaves your box alone. There's no sound of water out there. It's all at the culvert, right? So that's a good adaptive management piece that you can do if your culvert exclusion device isn't quite working the way you want, or it can't get as big as you want. again, it's the rocks around the perimeter to keep from excavating. Another way that we dealt with that problem of excavating underneath was we built cages. Well, Mark's crew built some cages to put in front of some of these culverts. So that picture there on the right is a large cage that we have in front of that's probably a 6-foot diameter pipe. So sometimes cages are the perfect solution for the site. It just depends on the site, but just be aware that you can do it that way as well.
That one on the right, the water level was probably 2.5, 3 feet higher than that cage when we started.
Yeah.
We had to clean it out and then install the cage.
Yeah. The one thing about cages, though, and I'll show this in another slide here, is that we've had calls about, well, you know, you got all these beaver traps out there in front of these culverts. What's going on? Oh, geez, yeah, we need to get out in front of that a little bit. They're not beaver traps. They're for to keep beaver out of. So, so a little bit of education there that we need to consider. But didn't even think it didn't even cross my mind when we saw these, that they look like beaver traps. So this is a site that we've got culvert. We've actually got 3 culvert exclusion devices at this site. Linwood Avenue. It's a fish-bearing stream. Oddly enough, I grew up in Tumwater, and this used to be on my paper route when I was a kid, and it would constantly be flooding, and it was from a beaver. So 40 plus years ago, we still had beaver problems back then in the same location. And you can see our MS4 ditch. Beavers just love piling stuff up right there, right in our ditch, and it would flood out the road every winter. I mean, every single winter. And we had guys, our crew would come out there almost daily to bust that dam out and get water flowing again and water off the road. We actually had a car that hydroplaned that area, flipped over on a ditch on its top too. So there's a liability issue with flooding as well to be aware of. So. And this is a aerial view of the site. The red marks there are culvert exclusion devices. The one on the south side of Linwood Avenue there is actually a driveway. And again, these are all on the upstream side of the flow. So you can see the yellow mark there is our beaver dam. The red mark that goes through the beaver dam is a culvert. I'm sorry, a flexible leveler. I'll talk about that in just a second. But the idea here was to exclude beaver from this section of stream. Beavers like to travel through the waterway to create their dams and whatnot. So we were trying to exclude the beaver from the section of stream, and it worked pretty well for quite a while. But eventually they found a way over land or whatever it might be. They figured out how to sort of navigate these culverts or exclusion devices and build their dam anyways. But that's okay. We've got some more tricks up our sleeve. So this is a picture of the site. We've got culvert exclusion devices at 3 locations. These are just showing two of the locations right here. We eventually replaced those 2 with the cages you see on the right here. And the cages actually work a lot better because they provide a bottom that the beaver can't excavate underneath it.
The bottom is just broken.
These ones we built 4 sides on the cage. So sometimes rock works great. This particular site, we tried rock. Beaver just started digging rock out. So, oh my gosh. So yeah, we decided cages would work best in these situations too. So a couple of those culvert exclusion devices. This is a fairly large one near our golf course. This is a large wetland feeds into this one. We've got some private property that this impacts, and he's kind of a difficult private property owner, so we don't want to ruffle any feathers. So this shows pictures of when we installed it in 2021 and 2023, and we haven't touched it in between here. We haven't maintained it, we haven't done anything. It still functions just fine. So this is the site on aerial. You can see we've actually got 3 beaver dams downstream, and you can see if that culvert is plugged. We've got a large wetland complex that would quickly back up and impact ball fields, golf course, and everything else. So we want to make sure we keep this one clear. Flexible leveler. This is a fairly simple solution for if you have a beaver dam that you want to get water to move through. It's basically a 10-inch pipe, flexible pipe, and you've got a cage on the upstream side, and then the pipe goes through the dam and allows water to go through with the beaver dam still building its dam in place. So alleviates flooding, beaver still does beaver things. This is a site we've got a flexible leveler at. They're fairly easy, fairly simple. Again, cattle fencing and pipe, pretty simple, pretty low tech stuff. The flexible pipe allows you to adjust that level through the dam, so you can keep water on the upstream side at the level you want it to be, and it also creates a non-fish passage on the downstream side. You can see this site here on the bottom right. We actually had a rigid pipe, and it created a perched outfall basically. So that was a fish passage barrier that we need to go back and address at some point. So flexible pipe is a key. We also use concrete cinder blocks to weigh it down. That's another important piece because this stuff floats all over the place. This is our Barnes Lake site. We've got a huge beaver population on Barnes Lake. We've got one flexible leveler on the outlet of the lake. This is super important because this is one of our first sites. You can see the picture on the bottom left was where we had the private property damage going on with the uncontrolled beaver. And we tried this once, and we had some unintended consequences with the beaver response. You can see a picture on the left. The beaver actually pushed the flexible pipe up, so it would, so water would flow through it at the level we wanted. So we reinstalled a second one, and so we were persistent there, and that's paid off. This one's been working for 6 years now. Haven't touched it on 5 years. Haven't touched it. It's been great. The data collection piece of this, what I want to get back to is, at the beginning, it's important to collect data. You can see here our water levels. They started to really creep up there over the years, and then the star is where we installed the first one, and then the second star is where we installed the second one. And you can see now that we've got water levels moderating over the years. So to further the data collection and be efficient here, and to be really succinct with our data collection, we installed a couple data logger out there now. So we collect data at the 12-hour interval instead of, I think it was a 2-week interval the last page. So you can see here, the effectiveness of a leveler, keeping water level moderate. The green line is the level of the bottom of the pipe for our leveler. So, and these are all rain events down here on the bottom of the graph. So we've got several of these in Tumwater. These are all different sites that we've got flexible levelers. A lot of these have been in place for years. Some we've just installed. We have every confidence that they're gonna make it for a long, long time. This is back to that Linwood site that I talked about earlier with that 3 culvert exclusion devices. We haven't had to touch this site now all winter long. We were used to be out there every day, so it's been great. Beaver dam analogs. These are man-made beaver dam mimicry type of structures. And so we use them in one site at the Linwood site to basically disconnect our MS4 from the wetland. We found that as we were busting out the dam all the time, we were draining the wetland. So we didn't want to do that. So basically by creating this beaver dam analog, we disconnected it from the wetland. We're able to keep water in the wetland, but drain the MS4 and keep water flowing. So that was an important feature too. So, and they're also used for a great restoration activities and habitat connection, stuff like that. So trapping strategies. There are sites, like I said, beavers don't belong. This is a site that we had where it's a privately owned pond. Beaver got in there, actually got into the level spreader and into the infrastructure of the pond itself and gummed it all up, and it was just a mess. It was not functioning at all. Ideally, this is a fenced pond, but you can see the tree up on the upper right. Tree came through the fence, allows the beaver in there. The thing about ponds, though, too, that you don't want them in, you maintain them so they don't have food in there. You can see this pond's got willow all over it, and so that's a food source for the beaver. Of course, it's going to come back. If the willow was not there, the beaver wouldn't be there either. So consider that when it comes to before you start field trapping strategies. Adaptive management. This is the most important piece of beaver management. You have to be adaptive. You have to be persistent. Be as persistent as the beaver, because they're going to be very persistent. 30 million years of persistence is what they got. So think about that. Just be as persistent. Educate others. Monitor with game cameras. That's been a kind of a cool thing for us in our communications department. They love seeing game camera footage. Collect data. There's just not enough data about this stuff either. We need to collect more data when it comes to this interacting with beavers and stormwater. So trapping, I want to get back to this a little bit more. So put some dollars and cents behind this. Trapping, I just did a phone call a couple weeks ago. It's about $600 to get a beaver trap. It's $400 to get set up and $200 per beaver. So you got that. Reoccupancy rate's 100%. So if you're going to trap it, it's going to be back, guaranteed. The relocation is only moderately survivable for the beaver. 30%, there's a 30% mortality rate in the trapping action itself, and then there's another 51% of emigration. So don't know where the beaver went. There was a study done by these folks here, these researchers in 2002, where they radio collared beavers, and 51% of them they just couldn't find. So 81% then is would be not surviving the relocation. So consider that. Cost benefit ratio. For every dollar you spend doing this type of method, you save 39 cents. So basically that's road maintenance, that's dam removal, that's all the maintenance that's included in this type of strategy. So the adaptive management strategies that we're doing, $200 per beaver management solution. That's about the cost of putting in a flexible leveler, a culvert exclusion device, very minimal maintenance. 1 to 5 years is very generous. A lot of sites we don't do even that much. Cost benefit ratio. If you spend $1, you save $8.37. So just by economic factor alone, it makes sense to do this. You have an 87 to 97% success rate by doing this method. So, and then that doesn't even, some of those cost benefits don't even cover the ecosystem services that beavers provide, the aquifer recharge, stuff like that's super important for the city of Tumwater. So I'm gonna hand this back over to Grant to wrap it up.
This is a really, really important aspect of things. As we move into really tweaking and graduating our program into another level, we're going to look to private property owners. We're going to look to team with folks in the community who have beavers in their backyards. We want to educate folks how to manage their trees. There's very simple solutions beyond putting cages around trees. Basically latex paint with sand, paint the bottom 4 feet of the tree, beavers won't touch it. So operations awareness training, of course we want to get everybody in the city up to speed on our beaver program. We want to, I think Dave's put some really good numbers to the cost effectiveness versus the gains. And then of course we want to pair this with an asset inventory of all of our critical areas, which means that we will be doing a deep dive, probably using drone, basically identifying where the dams are, where the dens are, so we can really quantify how many beavers we have in our community, where problematic spots might pop up that haven't popped up yet. And it's always good to just keep tabs on how many beaver there are. And of course, changing the attitude of folks. A lot of people view beavers as pests. As much as people say they love them, homeowners, property owners, or they get very frustrated. So we've implemented our first restoration project at Palermo, where we have beaver habitat. And so we're diving into how do you do a restoration project when you have beavers on site, knowing that they are going to pulverize your vegetation. So basically, the approach is to overplant. Protect what you can with cages in the early phases, but basically leave food for them. In this particular case, we had a 160-foot long buffer that we were planting along the wetland, and we planted 800 willow stakes, over 800 willow stakes, so we way overdid it. And of course, we've got large leaf maple, alder, and so forth. And we didn't protect the cages right out of the gate. And I think, Matthew, what was it, within a day or two, they started munching away. So you have to get on your protection devices immediately, typically day of. I think we ran out of time, but we went back, and I think in the next on slide. Oh, we, I didn't get images up, but basically, I think everything we put in protection now has remained safe. So, yeah, now we're gonna monitor this site, see what kind of vegetation remains in place. Hopefully the willow will grow up fast enough to provide a food supply that they can take from every year. And then we're gonna come back in with phase 2 plantings and really start building up that buffer. And once they have food, especially willow, that's grown and that can regenerate fairly quickly, most of the vegetation you put in will be fairly safe. You are going to lose trees as they mature, but if you use the latex and sand application, they actually should be fine. So of course, future planning and management includes collecting more data. You know, Dave and I are excited to basically get stuck into this and develop what types of data we really need. And of course, develop maps, identify problem areas, implement solutions, and then of course, you know, do that monitoring that we need. The resources that were mentioned earlier, highly recommend checking out Beavers Northwest, if you haven't heard of them. And then again, I can't thank you, Jen Vanderhoff, enough. She came to, I teach wetland science at UW. She was one of our guest speakers. That's where I learned about her and her work, and she has 2 documents that she just posted. One is restoring habitat where beavers are, and so really I've learned a ton from her and continue to learn from her, as well as Beavers Northwest staff there. And I think you're always welcome to call Dave and I. As you know, Dave's a wealth of knowledge with his experience, and I have a lot of catching up to do. But I'll be there.